Hello and welcome to the Gaggle Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samueli. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, it's looking increasingly like Ukraine is applying some serious pressure on its Western sponsor to be allowed to use its long-range missiles deep inside Russian territory. We know that back in May, the Biden administration finally relented and signed off on Ukraine using the HIMARS and the ATACMS on Russian territory, as long as it was only targeting Russian forces across the border, Russian forces that might have been involved in the operation at Kharkov. Then they extended it a little bit, but always said, but it's only, yeah, you can attack targets in Russia, but as long as it's just Russian, just across the border, who are involved in military operation. Yeah, exactly. Now, the British position was, however, yeah, you can do whatever you want. Send use the missiles we've given you, whatever way you think is suitable. There was a problem that arose because some of those missiles, like the Storm Shadow, requires American tactical advice. And so the Americans have said, no, you can't use them any way that you want because, you're still dependent upon us. So there's been disputes between Ukraine and the British and the Americans. But at the same time, we've got people like our friend Josep Borrell, who are saying, yeah, you got to just use everything. Yeah, whatever it is, just go for it. So I just want to show you a few of the stories that I've got. And we should remember that there's a Ukrainian delegation coming to Washington really sometime this week, demanding that the Biden administration relent on these restrictions on the use of these.
Will.
They probably will. That's been the record so far. So here's a story in the Financial Times. And here it says, why Ukraine's allies are divided over deep strikes into Russia. UK has pressed US to back Kiev's use of Storm Shadow missiles on Russian territory. And then says, Zelensky stepped up his appeals to allies to lift all their restrictions on the use of Western weapons against targets on Russian territory. Zelensky has made it Ukraine's top diplomatic priority to persuade Washington and other Western capitals to allow it to hit air bases and other military sites deep within Russia that are used to launch strikes against Ukraine. And then the US, UK, France, and other partners have the power to help us stop terror. The Ukrainian leader said, the issue has divided Kiev's allies. The UK and France are eager to allow Ukraine to strike military targets deep within Russian territory, while US and Germany are opposed. But, as we know, as you were saying, I mean, they're always kind of opposed, and then eventually they give in. Ukraine has been handed missiles with ranges of up to 300 kilometers, but told they cannot be used to hit targets in Russia. And then it says this is the ATACMS. And then the UK-French-built Storm Shadow air-launched cruise missile called Scalp-EG by France, which Paris and London began supplying last year. And then Kiev wants the German-made Taurus, which has a range of 500 kilometers. Ukraine also wants the right to use its newly arrived F-16 fighter jets, US-made but supplied by Denmark and the Netherlands, to bomb targets in Russia. And we just had a nasty shoot down of an F-16 fighter jet. That was a few $1 million burnt.
George, finish the sentence. Friendly fire.
That's right. That's right.
They shot one of their own down.
That's right. Why does Ukraine need these missiles to hit targets in Russia? Zelensky said Ukraine needed to be able to strike deep across the border to defend Ukraine from Russian missiles and guided aerial bombs. to prevent the transfer of Russian troops and counter the blah, blah. The occupiers' pressure on key front lines. That means hitting air bases, logistical nodes, command and control centers, and troop formations. Ukraine's armed forces have had some notable successes, striking Russian airfields with the drones, using home-based drones, but Western missiles are faster, more accurate, harder to intercept, and can carry much larger payloads than drones. And then, why are Kiev's allies so reluctant? In short, because the Biden administration and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz are worried about the risk of escalation if Western weaponry hits Russia itself. Ukraine and its more hawkish supporters say Washington and Berlin have repeatedly invoked the risk of provoking the Kremlin to justify not sending Ukraine precision missiles, tanks, and F-16 fighter jets. But on each occasion, when those weapons have eventually been supplied, Moscow's threats have come to nothing. This is the line Ukraine is using. He's saying, yeah, don't worry about all these escalation. Don't worry about Russian threats. They're just empty bluster. You don't have to worry at all.
Yeah, but I mean, but you know, the other theory of the case is that these precision missiles, F-16s, these tanks, and all that, they're not helping Ukraine win. Okay, and because they're not helping Ukraine win, and this is a bone of contention that George and I have, and trying to understand Russia's reaction to that escalation. But the escalation each time is not helping Ukraine win its conflict against Russia. However, and this is something George and I have talked about a lot, and we are in agreement with, is that we have to stop focusing on what Kiev wants and what instead we should be looking at what NATO collectively wants, led by the United States. These are two different arguments because one of them is about advancing the alliance's agenda to destabilize, disrupt, and finally break up Russia. The other one is about the defense of Ukrainian sovereignty. These are very different agendas.
Right. Okay? No, that's right. I mean, if you want to talk about what's going on on the front in the Donbass, yeah, it doesn't help them. It doesn't help at all Ukraine if that's just simply going to be your limited focus. If, however, the issue is can they just go on lobbing missiles and causing a lot of damage to Russia interminably into the future, then yeah, they can do that. That means you can just go on inflicting pain on Russia indefinitely, and that's really all that.
Yeah, but that's a pretty risky proposition. Okay, just because something has worked up to now doesn't mean it's always going to work, and that's what this big debate is about. Okay, because my sense is that now it's more and more clear. I mean, even now you have like the Financial Times discussing this. I mean, without NATO logistical support, surveillance support, et cetera, this is a NATO war on Russia. Right. Now it's on Russian soil. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, the terms and conditions are changing. Okay. Now it's what I'm kind of like the dealer at the poker table. It says, do you want to up the ante? You've been doing a pretty good job. Do you want to continue doing it? Go ahead, put your chips on the table. That's what this discussion is about.
No, I agree entirely. But that's the thing, because NATO is going to continue insisting, as it's been insisting all along, we are not a party to the conflict. That's what they say. Yeah, but these are NATO.
No. But Borrell said, you caught this last week. He said, we're not a party to the conflict, but we are in the I wish I had the phrase. Right. He did because of his mangled English. I don't think
But I mean, for things about Stoltenberg, this is the position. So we're not a party to conflict. Yes, NATO weaponry are being used on Russian territory. Yes, NATO is providing intelligence to Ukraine. Yes, NATO is helping Ukraine target targets inside Russia, but that doesn't mean we're a party to the conflict. I mean, that's going to be so. In other words, if you attack us, if you attack some NATO territory, that's an unprovoked attack. They're laying the groundwork and say that's an unprovoked attack on us, because all we're doing, little us, all we're doing is helping Ukraine defend itself, and that's kind of been their position. But as you say, that's a risky proposition. You can't
Well, it's
can't
well,
guarantee that
George,
that's going to work into the future.
why are we doing this video right now? Because we're there. We have
Yeah,
finally
right,
arrived at
right,
this point.
right.
Let me give you a little up close and personal, everyone, to tell you how it's being received here. Well, this wonderful piece of technology ain't working so well. Okay. Why? Because of the threats of what George and I are talking about, long range American Western made missiles being launched from Ukraine. They're taking very serious precautions here. Ordering their version of an Uber is not a walk in the park anymore. Okay. That's because there are conditions being put into play to have to deal with this. This is a serious business, as George likes to
Yeah,
say.
that's right. I agree. And then what about Britain and France? London has been making the case to Washington for months that Ukraine should be able to fire UK Storm Shadows at targets inside Russia. Well-placed figures have told the FT that the British government sent a request to both Washington and Paris earlier this summer to that effect. The Biden administration has denied it is withholding permission. The idea of a veto is too strong, said one person familiar with the situation. However, Downing Street admits that consensus among Western allies is needed on such a contentious issue, and they should move in lockstep.
But what I would contend that the quote here, the Biden administration has denied his withholding, blah 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 blah. Okay, what I think this is all about is the setting the terms and conditions of the narrative to justify it. They want to do this like nobody's business. They really want. And look, I don't like to, I'm almost loath to bring up the American presidential election, but there's like for at least for these Western countries, these NATO countries, a legacy issue is in the air. Okay. This whole fiasco is coming to a head right now. And who's going to be left holding the baby at the end? Okay. So this is very serious. I completely disregard, well, the Biden administration, I don't believe that for a
No,
second,
no,
George.
no. I mean, but this is a classic. I mean, this is what the Americans always do. The Americans always want to present themselves as being reluctantly, yeah, we really don't want to do this. We're getting pressed by Ukraine. We're getting pressed by the British, the Poles, the French, the Baltics. I mean, we just don't want to do it. We
And
want
don't you
peace,
think, George,
basically.
it's the other way around? It's the Americans telling the Germans,
Absolutely.
you
Absolutely.
press your position.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Stalin in 1928, kind of like, well, who's winning this one here right now?
Right.
And
Well,
then
but
you
yeah,
intervene,
yeah.
and then you say, here we have consensus.
You that's exactly what you have to do. That's what the Americans always do. Because everyone knows America runs the show. Of course, it's the American run show. Without America, you don't have NATO. So they want to present it as it's everybody else is pushing this. It's not us. God, we just don't. It's too strong. The idea of a veto is too strong. So in other words, you haven't vetoed. So basically, you're just going on. Yeah, please request, please ask us.
Yeah, but why is the word veto even mentioned if that's
Exactly.
what's really in play? They always see these people just are not very smart. Okay, why are you mentioning the word veto if that's not what is really in play here? Obviously, it's what's in play, and the word is in play, but the policy isn't. Come on.
Right, but that's the thing. I mean, in a way, it is smart because the media go in for it. The media always write this and say, "Oh yeah, God, Ukraine is coming to Washington to plead its case with United States. Oh God, what is it going to do?" Look, if the United States were to say no, that's it. It's no. There's no point in coming to Washington to talk to us. No one is going to talk to you. So that whole thing is just a piece of theater to say, yeah, oh, God, all right. Well, we'll talk to you. What else can we do? Anyway, it says another consideration is that Storm Shadow missiles may require access to U.S. intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance in areas where Russia is jamming GPS signals that the weapons used for targeting. Yeah,
What do you mean may require? Why are we? They do require.
that's right. Exactly. French President Emmanuel Macron in May gave his support to Ukrainian strikes on Russian territory using French missiles. We should allow the Ukrainians to neutralize the military sites from where Ukraine is attacked, he said. They should not be permitted to hit other targets or civilian facilities. What the hell does that mean?
Emmanuel Macron, let me do this here. Russia should be allowed to neutralize the military units from within Ukraine or outside that are attacking Russia. Can we use the same logic here?
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. Will Kiev be allowed to use long-range missiles in Russia? Quite possibly. Well, that's nice. So there's an FT. Will they? Quite possibly. So on previous occasions, Britain and France have moved ahead when the US was still reticent. Again, when the US made a show of being reticent, but then said, all right, if you insist. They were the first to pledge Western tanks to Ukraine, and they supplied cruise missiles last year when Washington was still refusing to send long-range ATACMS. So you got British tanks now inside Russia. You know, they're in Kursk. You have these Challenger tanks. Britain unilaterally allowed Kiev to use Storm Shadows to target Russian ships and naval facilities in occupied Crimea, to devastating effects when the US still had misgivings about Ukrainian strikes on the peninsula. Grant Shapps, he's the undistinguished UK Defense Secretary, who was Defense Secretary until July, is understood to have pushed hard for Kiev to be able to use their technology. Notice the British,
you know,
it's like, I don't know, just, and then the US didn't authorize or not authorize to use on that occasion. We didn't authorize, but we did not authorize. US policy has also tended to evolve, albeit with a lag.
I don't.
It relented on tanks and more recently.
I mean, George, whose idea to start? Whose idea was it to start this caper from in the first place? Okay,
exactly.
Did the United States reluctantly get involved in this caper?
And very reluctant.
Were they reluctant? Were they reluctant to recognize the government, the overthrow of Yanukovych in 2014? Right. Were they reluctant when it came to the Minsk Accords and the Normandy Forum? They were so reluctant all of the time. Right. Come on, this is just bullshit, okay? Really.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The latter were used, this is ATACMS, the latter were used earlier this year to strike Crimea. Berlin also relented on tanks, but is holding firm on Tauruses.
But go back to the leaked telephone call. It's right. Basically waiting for what the Americans have to say. That's what right. That's about.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And in fact, they didn't say no on that leaked call about the Tauruses. Germans never said no.
They were just thinking of the logistics of it and
exactly.
I think they were more embarrassed. The British are already doing it. We're not.
That's right. And again, plausible deniability. Basically, they need us to do it for them. How do we have plausible deniability so that the Russians aren't going to say, hey, it's Germans who are launching these Taurus missiles at us? Washington in recent months has shifted on hitting targets in Russia close to the Ukrainian border. When Russian forces launched an offensive into Ukraine's Kharkiv region, Kiev complained that it was not allowed to use Western kit to attack Russian troop formations, command and control centers, or logistics just on the other side of the border, of the frontier. The US adjusted its policy, saying Ukraine could hit targets close to the border that were being used to support Russia's offensive.
Yeah, but see, this is all part of the plausible deniability.
Of course it is.
The United States is the undisputed head of this aggressive military alliance, yep. And they're so vain. You think, well, we weren't in control of this policy. Because they're already writing the first history of this conflict. Okay, right. Is that maybe there are multiple chapters out there, but we were the hesitant ones. Right. This policy didn't go in the direction that we anticipated. Matter of fact, to play catch up all of the time. It's all BS.
Of course it is. Of course, and that's exactly what they're doing. So they're going to present it, and I heard, somebody was saying that, even insolently, they were saying that the Maidan. Oh, it was basically the British and the French and the Germans and the Americans. They couldn't control the people in Maidan. It was out of their hands. It was just an angry mob. They were ready to sign a deal, but it was with Yanukovych, but it was just an angry mob. That's it. That's the story. Yeah, we're just not in control. Same with Nord Stream. We told them don't do it, and they went ahead and did it. We tell them not to do something, and yet they go ahead and do it. They'll never learn. And the media just play along with this. They put along. Yeah. It's all out of our hands. Ukraine has used HIMARS precision-guided missiles, which have a typical range of around 80 kilometers and blah, blah. It also used German, American, and UK-made fighting vehicles and so on. And so this is from the Times of London. And it says, Ukraine is invading with British tank. What does it mean for us? Okay.
Well, I'm sure I know what they want to intend, but I think a lot of average Brits are saying, yeah, what is it? What does it mean for us?
Okay? Yes, exactly. That's right. Imagine, the British. I mean, this is the last thing that they want. I mean, all the problems that Britain has, and they're being force fed this rubbish about how Britain has to get involved in this war against Russia over Ukraine. It's something. There's no support for that whatsoever in Britain. And then the Kremlin spits fire and brimstone, but fears of a nuclear escalation are overblown, defense sources say. And so it says here, Wallace, this is Ben Wallace. Remember him, the UK Defense Secretary. Ben Wallace called on Olaf Scholz, the German Chancellor, to drop his opposition to Taurus being used by Ukraine. Storm shadows and French scalp have shown their worth in deteriorating Russian command and control centers and strategic targets.
No evidence of that, but anyway.
I don't think so. I don't think so either. There can be no more excuses for Germany to continue to block the supply of Taurus missiles, which could bring extra capability and a welcome refresh of ammunition stock.
Yeah, well, it implied there are no more excuses for Germany. So Germany has to face the consequences of it. But we in the UK, we don't have to face the consequences of a German decision. I mean, so convenient.
That's right, and we're nice and far away, so let the Germans carry the can. British officials and experts think their European allies are too concerned about provoking Russian escalation. Just stop worrying about it. Despite increases in the military kit supplied to Ukraine, security officials say there has been no sign of Russia even threatening to use tactical nuclear weapons, the nightmare scenario, which would make the Third World War threats credible.
That is not according to recent reporting. I mean,
I kind of,
Lavrov is, when he speaks, it's worth listening to, folks. Okay.
Yeah, we're going to get to Lavrov.
Who the hell? Okay, sorry. I want to take the wind out of your sails, but who the hell are you, Wallace? Okay. You're not even a decision maker.
That's right. That's right. And he didn't even get the job. He wanted to be NATO Secretary General. The Americans refused to support him. Imagine the Americans wanted, what was the name of that guy? The Dutch guy. I've already forgotten his name.
Ritter or Roffer.
Dirk, is it Dirk? Didn't Dick or something? Dick Schaap or something?
No. The Dutch guy got it.
No, he got it. No, but Ben Wallace wanted the job.
Yeah.
But the Americans wouldn't have him. So they picked the Dutch guy. The Russians always spit fire and brimstone, said one defense source. I can promise you they haven't moved a muscle in the direction of nuclear use since the war began. We look at all this all the time because tactical nuclear use involves lots of stages. Lots of people are involved, lots of movement of missiles.
This is kind of reminiscent of Montgomery trying to convince Eisenhower and Bradley of Market Garden.
Right.
Okay, the
That's right.
Germans won't do anything. They're a spent force. Okay, they're on their last legs. Okay, and this is a part of the great British tradition in modern military.
It is when they inconveniently they landed right on top of two SS brigades. Boom, Panzer SS Panzer Brigade. Well, that was a
They
bit of
did,
a
and
move.
George, they didn't take it well, did
They
they?
didn't take it well. Landing right on top of that, well, that wasn't a good. That was not a good move. Um, And yeah, that's so. Targeting a moderately concentrated brigade of 5,000 troops would need 5 or 6 nuclear warheads, the source says, an ineffective strategy. How the hell do they know any of this? I mean, there's been no nuclear wars at all.
This came out of a pub at late
I think literally in
at
a,
last call. Okay, who talks like this?
exactly.
What serious person
Yeah,
talks like?
I couldn't agree more. Such a move makes no political sense for Putin, who is understood to have been restrained by his Chinese allies. They have made clear that their support is dependent on no nuclear deployment, but Russia has also been warned of a massive US-led convention. All this, again, is just made up. This whole thing about the Chinese have issued some kind of an ultimatum to Russia where don't use nuclear weapons. Oh, that's just made up. It never happened. But Russia has also been warned of a massive US-led conventional response if they go nuclear. That was said. That was, you remember, I think we talked about this. Radek Sikorsky kind of came up with this. Where did Radek Sikorsky come up? Oh, there'll be a massive US-led conventional response if they go nuclear. What do you think is going to happen if there's a massive US-led conventional attack on Russia?
Well,
How do you
let's
think
think,
Russia
George.
will respond to that?
How would Russia respond to that? You say, "Oh, this is ridiculous." Look, okay, a massive U.S.-led conventional response. What is he talking about?
And I guess just U.S. attacks on all Russian military bases, air bases. That's what I'm assuming. Just
Okay,
every Russian military base and the air base in Russia.
good
That's
luck
not that's
trying
not
to
a
do
good
that.
move.
Luck
Because
trying to do that.
I don't think Russia.
Which of course would initiate Russia's
Yeah,
nuclear use policy.
absolutely nuclear. Absolutely, according to their own nuclear doctrine, that would immediately go into effect. Um, in October 2022, General David Petraeus, he of the of this ignominy of the former director of the CIA who commanded U.S. forces in Afghanistan, issued a public warning to Putin. He issues a public warning. Can't imagine,
Well, I'm surprised he didn't say the failed U.S.
Right.
failed commander of U.S. forces in Afghanistan. Anyway, nitpick.
That's right. He
Okay,
said, quote, we would respond by leading a NATO collective effort that would take out every Russian conventional force that we can see and identify on the battlefield in Ukraine and also in Crimea and every ship in the Black Sea. That is, of course, a warlike act, which, of course, would, you once you do that, then, of course, all bets are off because then you can no longer say we are not a party to the conflict, and therefore Russia will be absolutely entitled to strike all American bases, every single base, NATO base. And so, I mean,
it's a real pity that when Petraeus was writing this, too bad George wasn't right next to him to kind of tap him on the shoulder and say, but that means would be a party to the
it
conflict.
would be a party to the conflict. Damn.
Didn't think that one through,
No,
did you?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
What,
And
what,
then,
what, a, what a fraud that guy is.
oh, he was a complete fraud.
Remember everybody that, Ukraine's offensive of last summer was going to be a smashing success,
That's
according
right.
to
That's
the
right.
guy.
That's right. That's what he predicted. Exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. It was on television and predicted that. Um, and um, and then we're stuck here. Okay. And this is from the Telegraph. Do not squander our Russian invasion, Ukraine tells Britain. Foreign Minister Kuleba urges Western allies to take bold decisions over use of Storm Shadow missiles. It has to be bold. And then he goes on, Ukraine has urged Britain not to squander the momentum created by its invasion of Kursk and to grant it permission to fire Storm Shadow missiles inside Russia. Kiev ramps up its calls for UK to drop restrictions on the long-range weapons since mounting its cross-border raid into southern Russian frontier region. And then it goes on. He told reporters arriving at a meeting of EU counterparts in Brussels, what we want to avoid is the situation when the public message is that no one in principle is against deep strikes in Russia, but no real action is made to allow it. So,
well, I don't want to surprise anyone here, but I don't kind of blame the rhetoric from the Ukrainians.
No,
I mean, we did everything you wanted us to do. We broke off the peace talks in Istanbul. I mean, come on, guys.
That's right. Yeah.
And then what was it a year ago when Zelensky was at the NATO confab? I mean, he was the only one that made any sense. To be honest.
Exactly. Hey, you want this war with
Russia? You wanted us to do this.
Yeah, that's right. You want to destroy Russia. We're ready to do it. We're ready to lob all these missiles into Russia. The Telegraph reported earlier this week that the UK supports Storm Shadow strikes on Russian soil, but will not say so publicly because of concerns it would provoke a row with the US, even though it won't provoke it. But there's, yeah, we want to do it, but we've got to maintain the discretion. And then Emmanuel Macron, France's president, has issued a similar message about the use of Scalp PG, but it is understood the missiles operate alongside classified US systems, which requires permission from Washington. And then UK backs Ukraine to strike Russia with Storm Shadow missiles. Again, the Telegraph, same stuff. UK backs the use of Storm Shadow missiles by Ukraine in Russia, but will not publicly call for the move amid concerns it would provoke a row.
What's the difference? You don't want to make a public row, but how does that change policy? It doesn't.
It doesn't. Of course
it doesn't. So what?
Exactly. And then Zelensky has repeatedly asked to use the weapons which can avoid enemy radar and hit precise targets up to 190 miles away. You also kind of wonder what are they hoping for? I mean, I guess they just hope that we just keep being so destructive and just cause as much destruction as possible. Somehow that's going to work out well for you.
Yeah, but see, again, to kind of reiterate, I mean, what we've seen here with this ridiculous infantile British media is that we have these two imperatives that are parallel,
right,
and they don't want us to understand that they're separate. They try to fuse them, but they're separate. Because NATO is thinking about its strategy against Russia, and Ukraine said, "Hey, what about us? We're doing heavy lifting right here. We were the only ones that played by the rules, by the plan. It was your plan. We said, okay, we sign up to it. But see, that's the problem. We have two parallel things going on here, and the media will never tell you that they're separate, that somehow they're conjoined. They're not.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, no, the NATO plan is some kind of a collapse of Russia. Russia would just simply collapse. Quite why NATO thinks that that's going to work out well for NATO, that's not, that's the part that's baffling. A collapse in Russia, even if that happens, that's not going to be good news for NATO. That's going to be, that's bad news if there's a, some kind of governmental collapse or whatever. But that seems to be the plan that they're working with. So without thinking through, hey, how about think just 2 steps ahead? How's that going to work out well for you?
And meanwhile, what's happening to Ukraine?
Yeah, well, that's the least of your concerns. Yeah. And then, however, the missiles are generally used alongside classified U.S. systems. Again, a formal request to the U.S. has not been made for Ukraine to use the missiles inside Russia, but a Pentagon spokesman has previously said that the U.S. is concerned about escalation when it comes.
Oh, they're the ones that push escalation.
Of course.
This is absolutely absurd.
Of course it is. That's it. We're concerned. So what are you going to do about it? Remember when Biden, was it, I think, October 2022, when you remember when he made that speech? We are closer to a nuclear catastrophe than we have ever been since the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. Hey, who brought us to this situation? Well, just we're just closer to this crisis. I mean, just came about. White House sources say they also believe that many Russian targets were now outside the range of Storm Shadow missiles, so they may not be effective in the war against Russia. And
Well,
so, yeah,
okay, they say that today.
that's
Okay,
what exactly,
I'd like to
exactly,
know what they say tomorrow. Okay.
exactly. I mean, outside the range, give me a break. So Keir Starmer is understood not to want to provoke a row over the issue. You know, isn't that so nice? You know, I just, I'm that kind of a person. I don't like rows. Um, and then, um, and then here is a story from Politico. It says here, Ukraine to present Biden administration with targets it could hit in Russia, given the chance. US officials are still adamant that lifting the restrictions will not have a significant impact on the ground.
Well, this is going to go down the memory hole real fast.
Exactly. Ukrainian officials are preparing to present a list of long-range targets in Russia to top US national security officials that they think Kiev's military can hit if Washington were to lift its restrictions on US weapons. Ukraine is using the list as a last-ditch effort. Why is it last-ditch? To convince Washington to lift the restrictions on US weapons being used inside Russia. While Ukraine has previously provided the US some of its potential targets in Russia, this list is supposed to be more tailored. So that they're tailoring the list.
I like that tailor. Like it's like designing a suit here.
Exactly. Yeah, I went to go to a tailor. Ukraine's defense minister, Rustem Umerov and Andriy Yermak, senior advisor to Zelensky, will be in DC this week and plan to present the list to the administration during their discussions. The US has said for months that lifting the restrictions won't make a strategic difference in the war, as Russia has moved its most important targets, including aircraft, back from the border and out of reach. Again, this is just an argument that's completely
Yeah,
pointless.
but I mean, if we take the argument at face value, let's just look at that short paragraph here. The US has said for months that lifting restrictions won't make a strategic difference. So why do you keep fighting the war?
Right, yeah, right. That's right. But Kiev has identified several high-value targets that it can reach with US-provided missiles. It hopes the list will bolster its campaign to convince President Joe Biden to change his mind. But he's on the beach. I mean, it's
A mind is a terrible thing to change. I don't
know. Ukrainian officials have long lobbied the Biden administration to lift these restrictions on US weapons so its military can more easily launch offensives inside Russia. The administration has said since the beginning of the war, it worries lifting the restrictions could provoke Russia to launch even more aggressive
Yeah,
assaults.
but George, isn't this kind of like putting the cart before the horse? Have long lobbied the Biden administration to lift restrictions on U.S. weapons so its military can more easily launch offensives inside of Russia. What about what's going on in the Donbass?
Right.
I mean, what about what's going on inside of Ukraine?
Yeah, no, that's
Where's that story?
no,
Okay.
it's all of this is about these attacks on Russia, and it's never really discussed as to well what's the objective here, and that's really the thing. In all of these articles that we've read, no one has said, okay, well, what's the objective? What are you trying to achieve by making these deep strikes inside Russia? Because of course the objective has nothing to do with Ukraine. It's about inflicting kind of strategic defeat and humiliation on Russia. And that's and ultimately, if they try to say that to the public would be outraged by this. And what the hell are you doing? You're trying to cause a disaster in a nuclear superpower. How can you be so reckless as embarking on that? Oh no, it's all to do with Ukraine. How is this to do anything with Ukraine?
Yeah, well,
Why should
also
deep strikes inside Russia have anything to do with Ukraine?
in even the very distorted mention of attacking a nuclear power plant,
Right.
not in Zaporozhye in Ukraine
Right.
itself, and in Russia in the Kursk area. I mean, doesn't that make the hair on your head stand up? And what do you mean attacking a nuclear power plant?
Right. Right. That's right. That's right. While escalation is still a concern, the Biden administration has more recently been stressing its belief that there is little tactical advantage given Russia moving assets out of range. Yeah, it's just, we don't have a problem about escalation, but, it's just, maybe it's not tactically, well, all right, maybe, then they'll change their mind. Yeah, maybe it does make some sense tactically. The administration also assesses that Ukraine does not have enough ATACMS, and then Kiev is using many of those missiles in their offensive inside Crimea. A battle the Biden administration assesses is going well for Ukraine.
What offensive inside of Crimea?
Yeah, I don't know what they mean. I
I
guess they're
don't.
just hitting these ships. They just,
Well, I guess
warships.
offensive against Crimea.
Right, exactly. I guess that's all they mean. They're just attacking these warships.
Yeah, but everyone, I know the supporters of Ukraine and Biden's policy, it really titillates them if a ship docked off of Crimea is hit. I know it makes them feel very happy, but it doesn't change the military map. This is a land war. It
right.
has nothing to do with the sea.
Right. Some Ukrainian lawmakers and officials say they've seen signs that some in the Biden administration are considering lifting the restrictions in the coming days. A Democratic lawmaker with knowledge of the conversations also said the administration was considering Kiev's request. I'm sure that they are. The lawmaker was granted anonymity, and the White House has not said that it is considering any plan to change its policy. He has not said that it is
But
considering any plan.
this is the massaging of the
Yeah,
narrative,
that's
massaging it. That's what the whole purpose of this
that's
article.
right. That's right. And then here we have Lavrov. This is what you were talking about, this recent news conference. So the question, how would you comment Ukraine's demands as set forth in The Guardian? They seek the green light to use Storm Shadow missiles to target Moscow and St. Petersburg as a way to force Moscow to negotiate. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, the basic. I mean, if they start deep inside Russia, yeah, they're going to start hitting Moscow and St. Petersburg. That's what they're going to do. Sergei Lavrov, this is blackmail, an attempt to pretend that the West seeks to avoid any excessive escalation. In reality, they are full of mischief. Avoiding escalation is not what the West is after. To put it into plain language, they are simply picking a fight. I think this has become obvious to everyone. And then I recently cited John Kirby, who is the White House National Security Communications Advisor. A couple of months ago, he said that escalation would be dangerous since it would be extremely ill-advised to let the situation slide into a world war and that Europe would be the one to suffer in the process. They always say that, well, we don't want escalation. It could be very bad. World war that's the last thing we want. And then recently, John Kirby said this again. For Americans, any talk about the Third World War comes down to something that would affect Europe alone, and God forbid if it ever happened. This is quite telling, since this idea reflects the mindset of the American planners and geostrategy experts who believe that they can simply sit the whole thing out. I think that it is important to understand in this situation that we have our own doctrine, including one governing the use of nuclear weapons. An effort to update it is underway. That's a kind of an interesting, an effort
There
to
you go.
update it is underway.
Well, George, those that follow us here, we've been following this evolution of this discussion, and now it's underway. Before, George and I talked about probably a dozen times about different options,
Right.
What deterrence actually means in the 21st century,
Right.
and now words, it looks like, are turning into actions. At least it's underway, quote unquote.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Exactly. Moreover, these Americans are well aware of the provisions it sets forth. This fact transpires from the Freudian slip they make when they say that having a third world war would be a bad thing because they do not want Europe to suffer. Yeah, so yeah, that's how the Americans have always thought. Yeah, we'll have a nuclear war. Let's you and him fight. We'll stay out of it. You know, it's a nuclear war limited to the European continent. This is what the American mindset comes down to. They have a mindset of a master sitting somewhere out there overseas and believing to be totally safe and secure, thinking that not only Ukrainians, but also, as it turns out, Europeans would be willing to do the dirty work and die for them. And then we have long been hearing speculations about authorizing Ukraine to use not only the Storm Shadow missile, but also US-made long-range missiles. There was an anonymous source in Washington who said that they were working on it. The source purported that their overall view of Ukraine's request is quite positive. I will stop at that. President Putin said all about it quite a while ago. Now, all we can do is confirm once again that playing with fire is a dangerous thing for the men and women in charge of nuclear weapons across the Western world, but they are playing with matches as if they never grew up. Okay. So that's the situation. And it's we're heading towards this increasingly dangerous escalation without anyone applying any rationality and any common sense, and somehow thinking, oh well, Russia's sort of breathing fire and brimstone, so we don't have to worry about any of that. So let's just sort of lob some missiles, and it's all going to work out very well. Or maybe they think, if there is a nuclear war, we're going to stay out of it. Apparently, it'll, I mean,
yeah, but see, George is right, because again, these parallel narratives that are going on, all of this escalation hasn't helped Ukraine, but this escalation now is impacting Russia. That's a different equation. But they think that they're the same thing. They're very, very different and dangerously different.
Right.
And look, I mean, I've been following Sergei Lavrov for 20 years, and with a very few exceptions, he says what he does and he does what he says. I mean, it's pretty transparent here. So these words should be taken seriously. If they're adjusting their nuclear doctrine, that is news, okay?
Yeah.
Instead of the range of this missile or that missile, I'm not impressed with that kind of. I'm not a military man, so I look at the geopolitics of it all, and if they want to open up a new front, and they have, NATO has opened up a new front in Russia itself. That is a different equation, everyone.
I agree. That is when that happens, and this is essentially a NATO invasion, that absolutely could suffice to trigger Russia's nuclear doctrine. It could. I'm not saying it will, but it certainly it could suffice.
Well, it warrants, we think, at the very least.
Exactly. It's an invasion. It is an invasion of Russian territory. If this happened to the United States, an invasion of the United States, it would absolutely suffice for the United States to, start considering its nuclear doctrine and the possible use of nuclear weapons. It's an existential matter, and therefore, in those circumstances, and Russia has made this clear. Russia, when it's an existential matter for Russia, it doesn't have to be a nuclear attack on Russia. It's an existential matter for Russia. Then Russia's nuclear doctrine goes into effect. And now he's saying it's even being revised, so maybe they're lowering the threshold even further. So very serious situation. And when you listen to when we're looking at those newspaper reports with all this ridiculous bluster, sitting there in London, so yeah, we don't have to worry about anything. Yeah, we just do it. Lob missiles, and everything's going to work out okay.
Well, I mean, if the bigger picture of all this, I mean, just about everyone everyone that's been trying to figure out what this incursion into Kursk was all about. I mean, most people are quite befuddled by the whole thing, and this is a NATO gambit. Oh, NATO wasn't consulted. The U.S. didn't know about it. That's
Yeah.
all rubbish. They're all lying to you. Okay, what they're doing is, and it's something that I've mentioned for a long time. This is like another roulette spin. Let's see, let's drop the ball and see
Right.
what happens. I mean, okay, NATO's just invaded the Russian Federation. You don't think that's a dangerous thing to do? You think? Okay, I
Right.
mean that's why the justification. See, there's one of the arguments that has been made. Responsible statecraft and all of this. Okay, Russia won't use these weapons because it'll lose the global South. Well, you know that is that's kind of a convenient armchair intellectual discussion. Okay, but when your country is invaded and you have the means, all means available to repulse it, okay, I don't think you're going to lose the global South. They're going to say, look, these NATO guys, they're doing, they provoked Russia into a war in Ukraine. Now they're going for them. Okay, and so these arguments they make it's just so superfluous
Yeah,
in my.
that's exactly it. And for the Russian people, they know exactly what it means. You mean NATO has invaded our country, our land, our soil has been invaded by NATO. No one has done this since the Wehrmacht, and now NATO has done this. Russians understand that, and that's far more important than what does India think or what does Vietnam think. I mean, that's very secondary. That's the fundamental thing. This is a NATO invasion, and it could well be the preliminary to further NATO invasions. I mean, we talked about, there's the Moldova angle that still could happen, an attack on Transnistria. We
A
got
future coup in Georgia that will
the
realign their foreign
on
policy.
Georgia, then could also be an attack on Belarus. Poland and Ukraine could jointly attack Belarus. In other words, just give Russians an even more of a headache. All these things could be on the table. NATO is now acting so recklessly that you can say, yeah, why not attack Belarus? Well, why not Poland and Ukraine jointly attack Belarus, or maybe just Poland by itself could just attack and say, hey, look, I mean, we were provoked. Lukashenko was doing whatever. So all of these things could well be on the agenda, given the sort of the lunacy that is prevailing within NATO.
George is absolutely right that this is such reckless behavior. It's quite breathtaking, actually. Okay, because for every action there is a reaction. You don't think there's going to be a reaction, a serious reaction? I mean, there are veterans of the battle, of course. They're old, they're very old, but there's some of them are still with us. Okay, and they're venerated people, venerated. Okay, whoever came up with this is grossly miscalculating. Okay, and just for everybody to know, the area that we're talking about, heavily wooded, sparsely populated, a lot of little villages and all that. I feel very bad for these people. I've heard various stories that I'm not going to repeat here because I can't verify them. But you don't want to be under the occupation of a foreign military. Everybody knows that. Okay, so if they think that this was going to puncture the hole in the confidence of the Russian people, you were grossly wrong.
No question.
All right, to kind of sum up, everyone. I mean, this kind of smoke and mirrors and cheap talk. I mean, I'm glad I mean, it's hard work, but I mean, it just shows with the smoke that they're blowing in your face. Oh, we don't want to have a conflict,
we don't want to escalate. And in the meantime, we have, the Ukraine comes to Washington. Oh, can you just lift the restrictions? We don't have to worry about anything. Just lift this thing. It's all fire and brimstone. Don't have to worry anything about. Russia's a paper tiger. They just don't worry about anything.
Yeah, but I mean, what I find hilarious is the Brits telling the Germans,
That's
yeah, but they ask I mean, unfortunately, the current political elite doesn't have much historical memory, but it's indelibly stamped on German history. So you want another shot at it? Really? Okay, really?
Yeah.
No, I mean, because there are people in Russia that are saying we got to finish the job again. I mean, this is not about Ukraine. See, NATO is actually worsening it because people are now all saying NATO's invaded Russia. That's the narrative that is prevalent here. NATO's invaded our country.
Yeah. No, question. We got to do it all over again because it's basically the same crowd Stalin's analysis in 1945. They're going to do it again. It's just a matter of time before they try it again. Some new combination of powers. They'll get rid of the obvious Hitlerites, but basically, it's going to happen again. And they say, yeah, this is always it's the West always organizes itself in order to attack us. And so yeah, we just didn't finish off the job in 45. So yeah, absolutely. And if you're a Russian, you have to say, yeah, this is in the logic. I mean, there was we had a version of it during the Cold War, and now we have a new version of it, but it's the same crowd and it had the same agenda.
Yep. And the result will be the same, everyone. Unfortunately, we'll have to go through a lot of misery possibly to get there.
Yeah.
But um, the NATO propaganda machine is it's blowing chunks the way I look at it. I mean, this is so transparently dangerous, inflammatory, and the Russians won't react. Okay. Save that space, everyone. All right, everybody. That's our kind of whimsical, quizzical review of not the smartest people in the world talking about geopolitics in Russia. There are no real experts in Russia in the West anymore. It's almost non-existent. Very few people make any sense of it. Anyway, long-winded ending. This is Friday. My vacation's almost over. Next week, I'll know what day it is. George and I'll reconvene on Sunday, and then we'll see you guys for the live stream.
On live stream on Monday, Labor Day. No Labor Day for us. So 10 a.m. Eastern time. Please join us. Come with comments, criticisms, suggestions, and then on Tuesday I do my live stream solo. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate to our tip jar, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can work on the technology, and we might have some satisfied hounds one of these days. Well, no, he doesn't. They don't look happy. They're definitely not looking happy.
Apple.
So, remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.